Hozier, Unreal, Unearth album review. Let's chat about it. Hey friends, what's going on? John here from What's Spinning here tonight to chat about this latest album from Hozier. He is a singer, songwriter. He's been at it for a few years now, to say the very least. He blew up seemingly overnight with the success of his gargantuan single, Take Me to Church, which, you know, when I first heard it, I thought it was okay, but it did grow on me quite a bit. I wouldn't say it was enough to make me really dive into his debut album at the time. I kind of just, I don't know, passed it off as more modern, very clean alternative rock and blues. And, you know, I'm kind of upset that I did at the time, because I think that it's actually got a lot going for it. While not the biggest or boldest musical statement from Hozier, there is a lot, and I mean a lot, of really tremendous vocal performances on here, and just really good, just really hook-driven alternative rock. It's a little bit clean for my liking, but still, I thought it was a very solid debut album. It was a little long-winded, though, and when it was bad, it got genuinely bad. Now, we didn't hear from Hozier for quite some time after that, not until his Wasteland Baby follow-up album, and I ended up having a lot of the same thoughts on it. Once again, his vocal performances were spectacular. I thought the production was a little clean for my liking, but once again, this was an above-average alternative rock album, especially in the, you know, cleaner side of things. Not only that, but I thought that Nina Cried Power was even better than Take Me to Church and made my top 50 singles of the year. I thought it was a great single. Now, I've always been sort of an apologist for Hozier's music, and, you know, leading up to this new album, I saw it was getting a lot of hype. It's gotten a lot of praise since its release a few days ago. But I have to be honest, I'm just not feeling it this time around. Now, there are still quite a few very impressive moments, like this album's opening two cuts to Selby Part 1 and 2. Part 1 is very stripped down, rustic, dusty. If you're a Hozier fan, you know what you're getting here. And the vocals here are just silky and bluesy and so easy to warm up to. It's cool as anything. It's not the boldest statement of an intro, but it certainly gets you in the mood to listen to the rest of this album. And to Selby Part 2, initially I did not care for it as a single, but it has grown on me. It's got a much beefier riff to it. It's got this weird alt-kilter funk that I actually really like. I mean, once again, it's still a little clean for my liking, even more so than his first two records. But for a modern sound from Hozier, this actually has a lot going for it. He performs the hell out of it. The vocal performance, you know what you're getting. It's stunning, and this hook is really memorable. Francesca is another very bluesy, smoky ballad with a lot of heart. The pacing here is really immaculate. It's really well done. It has me on the edge of my seat, and it's all leading up to this gigantic chorus, and it's huge. And I would even say it explodes, because it is some of the noisiest material that we get on this entire album whenever it rolls around. And like I said, leading up to this album, the singles were very hit and miss with me, but between this and To Selby 2, honestly, they've grown on me quite a bit. The passion is here, the heart is here, and the finale that we get on this track is borderline kaleidoscopic. It's impressive. And Damage Gets Done, it works for me. I mean, this is a much more electronically tinged track. It's very bulky as well. Two things that I did not expect to really enjoy from Hozier ever, but it ends up becoming really hypnotic. And, you know, for a modern sound from him, it's actually done really well. It's super catchy, and there is a strong sort of 80s pop vibe to it, which on paper sounds like shit, but it's done really well. This track is gigantic sounding, and Brandi Carlile, who I've always been very hit and miss on, brings her A game and is the perfect feature for this track. Truthfully, I think this track, A, could have been a single, and B, it may be the best performance on this whole album. And for a stripped down raw ballad, look no further than Who We Are. As far as passion goes, I would argue that this is the album's peak. He sounds unbelievable behind this piano ballad. Instrumentally, it's a little straightforward, sure, but he makes up for it with passion, heart, and soul. So it's not like there's absolutely no good material on this album, but more than ever, there seems to be a lot of filler. Like First Time, for example. This track is way too sunny for me, man. Between the pristine production and a riff that is so desperate to be old school, it's just kind of pathetic. This, to me, sums up everything wrong with this album. I have no problem with Hozier going for a sunnier, sort of summery sound. That's fine. But this is so shallow and heartless, and the spoken word verses that we get are so phoned in, eye-carrying. Honestly, I don't think anybody asks for this. This very auto-tuned intro, God, that's bad. And what follows is just average. Sure, from a distance, it's very folksy and cute and very warm, very campfire sounding, very Bon Iver. If you're desperate for this sound, I mean, you might like this more than me, but I could argue that there's a lot more intimate folk music than this out there. And, like, it's just so shallow. Like, yeah, it sounds very sweet and quaint from a distance, but there's nothing going on. The strings are a nice touch, but his performance is phoned in. And Eat Your Young, as a single, wow, this track is awful. I genuinely think this may be the worst track here. I mean, the cleaner production of Hozier's music has always been a slight downfall for me, but this track here is a nightmare. This warped soul sample and this goofball riff, I don't want this. And the chorus is genuinely making my ears bleed. I don't know what happened. And things get even more out of whack in the second half of this album. I mean, once again, you're going to get tracks that are pretty good, like Son of Nyx. This is one of the most dramatic and genuinely beautiful tracks here. And yes, it's a full-on instrumental, but between the very dense atmosphere and the pensive pianos, it's stunning. The final results, I can't say no to this. It may be fully instrumental, but it's one of the most lush and detailed instrumentals I've heard all year. Butchered Tongue, initially I didn't like, but I have warmed up to this track quite a bit, mostly because of just how dense and atmospheric and slightly dark this track gets. I mean, the exhausted, very bluesy performance on this track, one of the coolest vocal performances that we get on this entire album. And Anything But is genuinely cool. I mean, it might be a little bit too sunny and peppy for you, but here, Hozier really, branches out, tries out some new influences, whether it be the sort of synth-pop melodies we're getting in the background or the much more obvious world music influences, and the once again sort of 80s larger-than-life ballad vibes. There's a lot going on here that sounds crap on paper, but actually really works. It's such a unique and different sound from Hozier that it's borderline daring. And First Light, as a finale, is one of the coolest moments here. This atmosphere is so interesting. It is so detailed. It is so dramatic. It's got this weird fantasy element to it that's done really well, too. The strum drift, the bluesy performances, the vocals, the production, everything comes together here. And on top of that, it's dramatic and probably one of the biggest and boldest statements on this entire album. I just wish that this album was a little bit more concise because it is a serious mixed bag. Like All Things End, for example, come on, what is this flimsy crap? I mean, Hozier has dabbled with soul since his earliest recordings, but this is so bland. There's nothing about this track that's completely viable. I mean, there's nothing wrong with his vocal performance here. It's actually totally fine, and there's nothing wrong with the sentiment behind this track either. Lyrically, it's beautiful, but there's nothing about this track that's new or exciting. I wish it was more rustic and dirty sounding and just bluesy and broken down. I wish it was all those things. It does have potential, though, because the gospel elements are fantastic. And to someone from a warm climate, my God, this is boring. This is one of the most tame ballads I've heard all year. I mean, vocal-wise, once again, good on you because they are immaculate. And as much as I love a good piano ballad, this is just so entry level. Nothing about this pops. Nothing about this stands out to me. It's boring. Abstract psychopomp, it's okay. It's very average. It's a very average piano ballad with nothing really wowing about it. I mean, the chorus, while simple, is probably the most effective thing here, but this instrumental is dime a dozen, and Hozier just sounds like he's phoning it in again. This sounds like him, but honestly, we've heard him perform a track like this, God, dozens of times, but so much better. And Unknown Nth, I mean, I've not really dug this as a single, and it hasn't grown on me either. It's really very boring, and from a distance, it sounds like Hozier by the books. I commend how dusty and rustic and broken down and bluesy it is. And lyrically, it's tender, it's sweet, it's charming, but there's nothing new here. And it's been like 4 years since we've heard from him. I just wish that, there was something that popped more about this album. And you can commend him for going for a more, modern sound. Because when he does it really well. And he certainly still has a lot in the tank. There's a lot of moments on this album where he still impresses the hell out of me. But this is by far his biggest mixed bag yet. If it's not the phoned in vocals, it's the way too clean production and him just running out of interesting instrumentals to work with, because there's a lot of amateur hour stuff here. It's okay. I mean, there's a lot of great stuff here, but as a project, I think this is his most mixed bag yet. I'm feeling, I don't know, a strong 5 on this album, but let me know what you all think down below. If you like the video, be sure to give us a like, give us a subscribe, and let me know down below what you would like for me to chat about in the future. And until next time, have a great day, friends.